The Voral Dominion had conquered 37 worlds. They moved through the galaxy like a slow disease, taking everything and leaving nothing behind. Their method was always the same. Find a planet, study its people, send one warning, then harvest. Admiral Tova stood in the command center of her flagship, the Endless Night. She was tall for her species, with gray skin that showed her age and eyes that had seen too many worlds burn. Around her, officers worked at their stations, monitoring the fleet of 200 ships that followed her command. "Admiral," said her navigation officer, "we have arrived at the next target system." Tova looked at the main screen. A yellow star burned at the center, surrounded by 8 planets. The third planet was blue and green, covered in water and plant life. It was beautiful in the way that all living worlds were beautiful before the Voral came. "Show me the inhabitants," Tova ordered. The screen changed to show images collected by Voral scout ships. Tova saw cities made of stone and metal, vehicles that moved on wheels, flying machines with fixed wings, ships that floated on water, and everywhere, the inhabitants themselves. They walked on 2 legs. They had 2 arms. Their skin came in different shades of brown and pink. They wore clothing made from plant and animal materials. "Primitive," said Vorel, Tova's junior officer. He was young and eager, not yet tired of conquest. "They have only reached their own moon. Their weapons are chemical explosives. Their fastest ships would take years to reach even the nearest star." Tova nodded slowly. She had seen this before. Every conquered world looked the same at first. Primitive, weak, easy. "What do they call themselves?" she asked. "They have many names in many languages, but the most common word translates to humans." "Humans." Tova repeated the word in her mind. In a few days, it would be a word only the Voral remembered. "Send the standard warning," she ordered. "Give them 1 planetary rotation to respond. Then we begin harvesting." 1. The communication officer prepared the message. It was the same message the Voral had sent to 37 worlds before. It explained what was coming. It offered a choice. Surrender peacefully, and some of your people will be kept as labor. Or resist and be completely destroyed. No world had ever successfully resisted. Some had tried. Their planets were now empty rocks, stripped of all life. The message was sent. It traveled at the speed of light toward the blue planet, carrying the death sentence of an entire species. On Earth, it was 3:47 inches the morning in Korea when the message arrived. A deep space monitoring station outside Daejeon was the first to receive it. The technician on duty was a young woman named Go-eun. She was drinking her 3rd cup of coffee when her computer started making sounds she had never heard before. At first, she thought it was a malfunction. Then she thought it was a joke from one of her coworkers. Then she translated the first part of the message and dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but she did not notice. She was already reaching for the emergency phone. Within 1 hour, every major government on Earth knew about the message. Within 2 hours, the United Nations called an emergency session. Within 3 hours, military forces around the world went to their highest alert status. People started to panic. Some ran to churches and temples. Some ran to stores to buy food and water. Some simply stood outside and looked up at the sky, searching for the ships they knew were coming. But while the world panicked, one person was calm. Dr. Park Yuna was a professor of linguistics at Seoul National University. She was 43 years old, unmarried, and had spent her entire career studying patterns in language and communication. When her phone rang at 4 inches the morning, she was already awake, reading a research paper about ancient cave formations. The caller was General Kim Do-won, a military officer she had worked with before on classified projects. His voice was tense, but controlled. "Dr. Park, we need you at the emergency command center." "Now." "I saw the news," Yuna said. "The alien message. Then you know why we need you. You're the best linguist we have." Yuna was quiet for a moment. She looked at the research paper on her desk. It showed photographs of crystal formations found in caves on 6 different continents. Formations that were not natural. Formations that matched patterns she was now seeing in the alien message. "General," she said slowly, "I don't think you need me to translate their message. Then what do we need you for? To tell you who they are, and why they're afraid of us." There was a long silence on the phone. "What are you talking about?" the general finally asked. Yuna picked up the photograph of the cave crystals. She had spent 10 years studying them. 10 years trying to understand what they meant. Now, finally, she knew. "They've been here before," she said. "A long time ago. And something went wrong for them. Something they didn't expect." "How long ago?" Yuna took a breath. 65 million years. She could hear the general's confused breathing. She understood. It sounded insane. But she had the evidence. She had always had the evidence. She just hadn't known what it meant until now. "I'll explain everything when I arrive," she said. "But, General, I need you to understand something important. These aliens, the Voral, they think they're coming to harvest a primitive world. They think we're weak. They think we're easy, aren't we?" Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. She thought about human history, the wars, the plagues, the disasters. All the times humanity should have died but didn't. All the times they were knocked down and got back up. All the times they faced extinction and somehow survived. "General," she said, "we are what grew back after they tried to kill us the first time. We are the children of the survivors. We are what happens when you fail to finish the job." She paused. "And I think it's time we reminded them of that." 20 minutes later, a military helicopter landed on the roof of Yuna's apartment building. She climbed aboard, carrying only a laptop bag and a folder full of research. As the helicopter lifted into the dark sky, she looked down at the city of Seoul. Millions of people lived there. Millions of people who were now in danger. But Yuna was not afraid. She had spent her whole life studying how species communicate, how they threaten, how they warn, and she had learned one important truth. The species that sends warnings is not the most dangerous one in the conversation. The most dangerous one is the species that doesn't need to warn. Because they've already decided what they're going to do. The Voral had sent their warning. Now it was humanity's turn to respond. And humanity had 65 million years of anger to express. The United Nations Emergency Assembly was chaos. Representatives from every country were shouting at each other. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to pray. Some wanted to hide. Nobody knew what to do. And everyone was afraid. Dr. Park Yuna stood at the back of the room, waiting. General Kim Do-won was beside her. His face, hard and serious. They had arrived an hour ago, but the assembly was too disorganized to hear anyone speak. "This is a waste of time," the general muttered. "We only have 20 hours before the Voral deadline." 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. "They need to panic first," Yuna said calmly. "Then they'll listen." She was right. After another 10 minutes of shouting, the assembly finally fell quiet. People were exhausted, scared, ready to hear anything that might give them hope. The Secretary General called for order and invited Dr. Park to the podium. Yuna walked slowly to the front of the room. She was not a politician or a military leader. She was a professor who had spent her life in libraries and laboratories. But she had something none of them had. She had the truth. "I know who they are," she began. Her voice was quiet but clear. "The Voral. I know what they do and how they do it. And I know that they've been to Earth before." The room was completely silent. 65 million years ago, this planet was ruled by creatures we call dinosaurs. They dominated Earth for over 150 million years. Then, suddenly, they were gone. We have always believed they were killed by an asteroid impact. We were wrong. She pressed a button, and the main screen showed images of her cave crystal research. Formations found on 6 continents. Patterns in the rock that could not be natural. These formations match the energy signature of the Voral transmission we received. They are markers, landing sites, harvesting zones. The Voral came to Earth 65 million years ago and harvested the dinosaurs. Whatever they couldn't use, they destroyed. They sterilized the planet from orbit and left it to recover. A representative from Brazil stood up. If they destroyed everything, how did anything survive? They didn't destroy everything, Yuna said. They destroyed everything large, everything visible, everything they considered valuable. But they missed the small creatures, the mammals that hid in burrows and caves. The survivors. Devness. She looked around the room. We are the descendants of those survivors. We are what grew back after the Voral left. We evolved from tiny, frightened animals that learned to hide from predators. And over 65 million years, we became this. A species that covers the entire planet. A species that has visited our moon and sent machines to other worlds. A species that has never stopped growing, never stopped fighting, never stopped surviving. The American representative raised his hand. Dr. Park, this is very interesting history. But how does it help us? If the Voral could destroy the dinosaurs, they can certainly destroy us. Well, Yuna nodded. You're right. They can destroy us. Their technology is far beyond ours. We cannot beat them in a fight. We cannot run from them. We cannot hide from them. Then, what can we do? Yuna smiled. It was not a friendly smile. We can make them afraid. Class. We. The room filled with confused murmurs. The Chinese representative laughed out loud. Make them afraid? They have 200 warships. They have conquered 37 planets. What could possibly make them afraid of us? The same thing that makes all predators afraid, Yuna said. The knowledge that their prey will never stop hunting them back. She changed the image on screen. Now it showed human history. Wars. Weapons. Empires rising and falling. Cities burning and being rebuilt. Plagues killing millions, and humanity recovering. Nuclear explosions. Concentration camps. Genocides. And after each terrible image, more humans. Always more humans. This is what we are, Yuna said. We are not a peaceful species. We are not a forgiving species. We have spent our entire existence fighting each other with everything we have. We have weapons that can poison the land for 1,000 years. We have diseases we created in laboratories. We have destroyed entire peoples over differences in belief. We do not stop. We do not forget. We do not forgive. She paused to let her words sink in. The Voral think they are coming to harvest a primitive world. They see our chemical rockets and our simple weapons, and they think we are easy prey. They don't understand what we really are. And what are we? Asked the Russian representative. Yuna's eyes were cold. We are the most successful invasive species in the history of this planet. We spread to every continent. We survived every disaster. We killed every competitor. And we did it all in less than 300,000 years. That is nothing. That is a heartbeat in evolutionary time. We went from hiding in caves to walking on the moon in 300,000 years. She leaned forward. Now imagine what we'll do in the next 300,000 years. Imagine where we'll spread, how many worlds we'll colonize, how far we'll reach. And imagine what we'll do to the species that tried to harvest us like animals. General Kim Do-won stepped forward. Dr. Park is correct. We cannot win a military fight against the Voral. But we can win a different kind of fight. A psychological fight. He looked around the room. The Voral's power depends on fear. Every species they encounter is afraid of them. Every species surrenders or is destroyed. But what happens if a species is not afraid? What happens if a species is so dangerous, so persistent, so unwilling to die, that the Voral decide we are not worth the risk? They'll attack anyway, someone said. Maybe. The general agreed. But maybe not. The Voral are conquerors, not warriors. They like easy victories. They like prey that doesn't fight back. If we can convince them that fighting us will cost more than they gain, they might leave. And if they don't leave, Yuna answered, then we make sure some of us escape. We scatter across the galaxy like seeds, and in 10,000 years, in 50,000 years, in 100,000 years, we find them. We find every Voral world, every Voral colony, every Voral ship, and we take revenge. The room was silent again. But this time, it was a different kind of silence. Not confusion, not panic, something else. Hope. It was a dark hope, a violent hope, but hope nonetheless. What do you need from us? The Secretary General asked. Yuna looked at General Kim. He nodded. We need to send them a message, Yuna said. Not a surrender, not a threat. A warning. We need to show them exactly what humanity is capable of. Every war we've fought, every weapon we've built, every enemy we've destroyed. We need to show them our history of violence and ask them one simple question. Do you really want to add us to your list of enemies? The Assembly voted within the hour. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would not surrender. Humanity would not fight. Humanity would do something far more dangerous. Humanity would tell the truth about itself. And in her command ship at the edge of the solar system, Admiral Tova waited for a response from the primitive blue planet. She expected silence or surrender. She would get neither. Lieutenant Choi Hana had not slept in 2 days. Her eyes burned. Her hands shook from too much coffee. But she could not stop working. Nobody could stop working. They had less than 10 hours before the Voral deadline, and the message was not ready. She sat in the communications center deep underground beneath Seoul. Around her, dozens of technicians worked at computer stations, compiling data, translating files, encoding transmissions. The room was loud with voices and keyboard clicks and the constant hum of machines. Dr. Park Yuna stood at the center of it all, directing the work like a conductor leading an orchestra. She moved from station to station, checking progress, making corrections, pushing everyone to work faster. The weapons archive is ready, someone called out. Add it to the main file, Yuna ordered. What about the population data? Still compiling. 5 more minutes. We don't have 5 minutes. We have no minutes. Work faster. Hana focused on her own task. She was responsible for encoding the message so it could be transmitted on every frequency the Voral might monitor. It was technical work, complicated and precise, but she was good at it. That was why she had been chosen for this project. But as she worked, she kept looking at the content of the message they were building, and it frightened her. She had always known humanity was violent. She had studied history in school. She knew about wars and genocides and atomic bombs, but seeing it all compiled into one document, one massive file that showed everything humans had done to each other, was different. It was overwhelming. It was horrifying. It was true. Lieutenant Choi. Yuna's voice came from behind her. How is the encoding? Hana turned around. The professor looked exhausted, but her eyes were still sharp and focused. Almost finished, Hana said. But, Dr. Park, I have to ask. Are you sure about this? Sure about what? Hana gestured at her screen. This message. We're showing them everything. Every terrible thing we've ever done. We're proving that we're violent and dangerous and vengeful. What if it makes them more likely to attack? What if they decide they have to destroy us before we become a threat? Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled up a chair and sat beside Hana. Let me tell you something about predators, she said. I've spent my life studying communication. Not just human communication, animal communication. the signals that species send to each other. She pointed at the screen. When a prey animal sees a predator, it has two choices. It can run, or it can fight. But there's a third option that most people don't think about. It can display. Display. Show the predator what it can do. A cobra spreads its hood. A porcupine raises its quills. A skunk turns around and lifts its tail. They're saying, I see you. I know what you want. And I'm telling you that attacking me will cost you more than you'll gain. Yuna leaned back in her chair. That's what we're doing. We're not threatening the Voral. We're not challenging them to a fight. We're showing them what we are. We're saying, yes, you can kill us. But we will make it hurt. We will make it expensive. And some of us will escape. And we will never, ever forgive you. Hana thought about this. But what if they don't believe us? What if they think we're bluffing? That's why we're showing them real history. Real weapons. Real numbers. We're not making threats. We're presenting facts. And the facts speak for themselves. Yuna smiled grimly. The Voral have conquered 37 worlds. But they've never encountered anything like us. They've never seen a species that fights itself with such dedication, such creativity, such persistence. She stood up. Finish the encoding, Lieutenant. We send the message in 1 hour. Hana nodded and returned to her work. Her hands had stopped shaking. She understood now. This was not about making the Voral angry. It was about making them careful. Making them think twice, making them ask themselves, is this worth it? 1 hour later, the message was ready. It was the largest transmission in human history. It contained hundreds of thousands of files, documents, images, videos, data. Everything was organized into categories: military history, weapons development, population growth, genetic diversity, territorial expansion. And at the center of it all, a simple statement written in every human language and translated into the Voral communication format. We know what you are. We know what you did to this planet 65 million years ago. We survived then. We will survive now. If you attack us, we will resist with everything we have. We will make you pay for every meter of ground. We will burn our own cities before we let you take them. And when you think you have won, you will discover that some of us escaped. We will scatter across the galaxy. We will grow. We will spread. And we will find you. Not in a year. Not in 100 years. But we will find you. And we will do to you what you tried to do to us. We will spread. This is not a threat. This is a fact. We do not forgive. We do not forget. We are human. And now you know what that means. The message was transmitted from every antenna on Earth. Radio dishes pointed at the sky. Satellites broadcasted into space. Even amateur radio operators joined in, adding their small voices to the chorus. And then, humanity waited. In the streets of Seoul, Hana's family watched the news. Her mother held her father's hand. Her younger brother stared at the television screen with wide eyes. They knew their daughter was part of the team that sent the message. They were proud and terrified at the same time. In churches and temples and mosques around the world, people prayed. Some prayed for peace. Some prayed for strength. Some simply prayed for another sunrise. In military bases, soldiers prepared for the worst. They knew they could not win a fight against the Voral. Their weapons were toys compared to alien technology. But they were ready to fight anyway. That was what humans did. And in the command center beneath Seoul, Dr. Park Yuna sat alone in a quiet room. She had done everything she could. The message was sent. Now it was up to the Voral to decide what happened next. She thought about her parents, who had died years ago. She thought about her students at the university. She thought about the streets of Seoul where she had grown up, the restaurants where she ate, the parks where she walked. All of it could be gone in a few hours. But she was not afraid. She had studied human history her entire life. She knew what humans were capable of. The violence, the cruelty, the destruction. But also the courage, the stubbornness, the absolute refusal to surrender. If the Voral attacked, humans would fight. They would lose. But they would fight. And some of them would escape. That was the one thing Yuna was certain about. Humans were very, very good at surviving. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from General Kim. Transmission received by Voral Fleet. Waiting for response. Yuna put down her phone and looked at the ceiling. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the moon, an alien admiral was watching humanity's message, seeing their history, their weapons, their numbers, their promise. What would she think? What would she decide? Yuna did not know. But she knew one thing for certain. The Voral had never received a message like this before, and they would never forget it. Admiral Tova watched the human transmission alone in her private chamber. She had dismissed her officers. She did not want them to see her reaction. The message played on a large screen in front of her. She had been watching it for 3 hours. She had watched it from beginning to end 4 times. And each time, she felt something she had not felt in many years. Uncertainty. The Voral had conquered 37 worlds. Tova herself had led the harvesting of 12 of them. She knew what prey species looked like. She knew their behavior. When they received the Voral warning, they panicked. They argued among themselves. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to surrender. In the end, they always made the same mistake. They tried to negotiate. They sent messages asking for mercy. They offered resources. They begged. The humans did none of these things. Instead, they sent a history of violence so detailed, so extensive, that it took Tova 3 hours to review it all. Wars that lasted 100 years. Weapons that could poison entire continents. Bombing campaigns that killed millions. Diseases created in laboratories. And the numbers. Always the numbers. The human population had doubled in 50 years. Doubled again in another 50. They spread across their planet like a flood. They killed everything in their path. Animals, plants, even each other. And they never stopped. But what disturbed Tova most was not the violence. Violence was common in the galaxy. Many species fought. Many species killed. What disturbed her was the persistence. The humans had fought 2 global wars in a single generation. In the second one, they used atomic weapons on cities full of their own kind. And after the war ended, they rebuilt. They grew. They became stronger than before. They did not learn to stop fighting. They learned to fight better. Tova paused the transmission on an image of a human city. It was called Hiroshima. The image showed the city before and after the atomic bomb. In the before picture, it was full of buildings and people. In the after picture, it was flat and empty. Total destruction. But there was a third image. The same city, 50 years later, rebuilt, full of buildings and people again, as if the bomb had never fallen. That was what frightened Tova. She could destroy every human city. She could burn every forest and boil every ocean. But could she kill them all? Every single one? Because if she missed even a few, if even a small group of humans escaped into the galaxy, they would do exactly what their message promised. They would grow. They would spread. They would remember, and they would come back. There was a knock at her door. Admiral. Tova turned off the screen. Enter. Voral and 3 senior officers came into the room. They looked confident and eager. They had not watched the human message as carefully as Tova had. Admiral, Voral began. We have analyzed the human transmission. We believe it is a bluff. Their weapons are primitive. Their ships cannot even leave their own star system. They are trying to frighten us with history and numbers, but they cannot actually harm us. Tova looked at him. Did you watch the entire message? Yes, Admiral. Then you saw their nuclear weapons, their biological weapons, their chemical weapons, primitive technology. Our shields can easily. I'm not talking about using them against us, Tova interrupted. I'm talking about using them against themselves. Vorel blinked, confused. Admiral? Tova stood and walked to the window. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them was the blue planet, waiting for her decision. The humans have demonstrated that they are willing to destroy their own cities, their own people, to win a war. They have burned their own crops to deny food to enemies. They have poisoned their own land to stop invasions. They have killed millions of their own kind over differences in belief. She turned back to her officers. Enetend. Crete. Weather tend. Weather tend. Crete. What do you think they will do when we try to harvest them? They will resist, Vorel said. And they will lose. Yes. But how many resources will we lose taking the planet? How many ships? How many soldiers? And after we win, what will be left to harvest? A burned, poisoned, radioactive rock. The officers were silent. Tova continued. And that assumes we kill them all. What if we don't? What if some escape? They have already sent machines to other planets in their system. They have the knowledge to build ships that can travel between stars. Then we don't give them time, another officer said. We attack now. We destroy them completely. Can we? Tova asked. Can we really destroy every human on the planet? Every hidden bunker? Every underground shelter? Every submarine in the ocean? Can we find every genetic sample they have stored? Every frozen embryo? Every seed bank? She shook her head. The humans survived extinction once. They evolved from small animals that hid from predators. They are very good at hiding, very good at surviving, and very good at waiting. The room was quiet. The officers were beginning to understand. Vorel spoke carefully. Admiral, what are you suggesting? Tova did not answer immediately. She walked back to the screen and turned it on again. She showed her officers the final part of the human message. The promise. We will find you. Not in a year, not in 100 years, but we will find you, and we will do to you what you tried to do to us. This is not a threat. This is a fact. We do not forgive. We do not forget. I am suggesting, Tova said slowly. The officers looked at each other. One of them laughed nervously. Our entire civilization is built on the certainty that resistance is futile. If we retreat from one primitive planet, that certainty is broken. I know, Tova said. But consider the alternative. We attack Earth. We win. We harvest what remains. And then we wait. We wait 10,000 years for human ships to appear in Vorel space. We wait for them to find our colonies, our homeworld, our children. She paused. Is any harvest worth that? The officers had no answer. Tova dismissed them. She needed to think. She needed to decide. She turned back to the screen and watched the human message again. This time, she focused on the faces. Humans of all ages. Children playing. Soldiers fighting. Scientists working. Farmers growing food. Artists making music. They were so strange. So violent. So persistent. And they were watching her right now, she knew. Waiting for her decision. Preparing for the worst. Getting ready to fight, even though they knew they could not win. That was the most disturbing thing of all. They knew they would lose. They sent their message anyway. They did not beg. They did not offer surrender. They simply said, "This is what we are. Decide wisely." Tova had conquered 12 worlds. She had killed billions of creatures. She had never hesitated before, but she hesitated now, because for the first time in her career, she was not certain she could win, not the battle. The Vorel would win the battle, but winning a battle was not the same as winning a war, and something told her that a war with humans would never truly end. They would keep fighting, keep surviving, keep remembering, forever. Was any harvest worth that? Tova did not know. But she was beginning to suspect the answer was no. The Voral fleet did not attack. 1 day passed. Then 2. Then 3. The deadline came and went, and the alien ships remained motionless at the edge of the solar system. On Earth, nobody knew what was happening. Some people thought the Voral were preparing a larger attack. Some thought they were waiting for reinforcements. Some thought humanity's message had worked. Most were simply afraid to hope. In the command center beneath Seoul, Dr. Park Yuna waited with the others. She had not left the bunker since sending the message. She ate there, slept there, lived there. General Kim Do-won was with her, along with Lieutenant Choi Hana, and a team of analysts who monitored every signal from space. Still no movement, Hana reported for the 100th time. The fleet is holding position, Yuna nodded. She was tired. So tired. But she could not rest. Not until she knew. What are they doing out there? General Kim muttered. Why don't they attack or leave? Why just sit there? They're deciding, Yuna said. They're trying to figure out if we're worth the cost. And if they decide we are? Yuna didn't answer. They both knew what would happen. The Voral would attack. Humanity would fight. Humanity would lose. But not completely. Engineer Baek Jisoo and her team had finished the seed ships. 12 vessels hidden in different locations around the world, each carrying human genetic material, cultural archives, and enough technology to rebuild civilization on another world. If the Voral attacked, those ships would launch. Some would be destroyed. But some would escape. That was the plan. It was not a good plan. But it was the only one they had. Another day passed. And then, on the morning of the 5th day, Hana suddenly sat up straight at her station. Admiral, she said. Then she corrected herself. Doctor. General. Something is happening. They rushed to her screen. The Voral fleet was moving. 200 ships were changing position, forming a new pattern. Are they preparing to attack? General Kim asked. Hana studied the data. Her eyes went wide. No, she whispered. They're turning around. They're leaving. For a moment, nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Then the command center exploded with cheers and shouts and crying. People hugged each other. Some fell to their knees. Some just stared at the screen, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Voral were retreating. The Voral were leaving. Earth was saved. Yuna did not cheer. She stood quietly and watched the alien ships turn away from the solar system, one by one. She should have felt happy. She should have felt relieved. But she felt only tired. Tired and sad. General Kim stood beside her. You did it, he said. Your message worked. 4. Loxtan. Maybe, Yuna said. Or maybe they just decided we weren't worth the trouble. Maybe they'll come back in 100 years, or 1,000. When they think we've forgotten, then we'll be ready for them. Yuna nodded slowly. Yes, we'll be ready. But she wasn't thinking about the Voral anymore. She was thinking about humans. About what she had shown them. About what they had learned about themselves. The message to the Voral had contained all of human history. Every war, every weapon, every genocide, every cruel and terrible thing humans had ever done. Yuna had compiled it all, organized it all, sent it all to an alien species to prove how dangerous humanity could be. And it had worked. But now, that information was public. Now, every human on Earth had seen it. They had seen the full scope of their own violence, their own cruelty, their own capacity for destruction. What would they do with that knowledge? Would they be ashamed? Would they try to change? Or would they be proud? Would they decide that violence was their greatest strength, the thing that made them special? Yuna did not know, and that frightened her more than the Voral ever had. In the days that followed, Earth celebrated. People danced in the streets. Governments declared holidays. Religious leaders called it a miracle. The Voral fleet disappeared into deep space, and humanity was alone again. But things were different now. The seed ships did not return to storage. Instead, they were improved and expanded. More ships were built. The original 12 became 50, then 100. Humanity had learned that they were not alone in the universe, and they were determined never to be caught unprepared again. New telescopes were built to watch the stars. New weapons were designed to fight alien invaders. Military budgets increased in every country. The world's governments began to work together in ways they never had before, united by a common fear. And somewhere in all of this, something else began to change. Yuna noticed it first in her students. They walked differently, talked differently. They were proud, in a new way, a hard way. They had seen the human message to the Voral. They had seen what their species was capable of, and instead of being ashamed, they were impressed. One of her students said it directly one day in class. "We scared them," he said. "We scared an alien empire so much, they ran away. That makes us the most dangerous species in the galaxy." The other students nodded. They liked that idea. They wanted it to be true. Yuna did not know what to say. She had wanted to save humanity. She had not wanted to teach them to celebrate their own darkness. But maybe that was inevitable. Maybe humans needed that darkness to survive. Maybe the same violence that had caused so much suffering was also the thing that would carry them to the stars. She hoped not. She hoped humanity would find a better way. But she was not certain. 1 year after the Voral retreat, Yuna stood on the roof of Seoul National University and looked up at the night sky. The city spread out around her, bright and alive and full of people. All of it had almost been destroyed. All of it had been saved by a message that said, "We are violent. We are dangerous. We will never stop coming for you." All of it had almost calm. "We will never stop coming for you." Lieutenant Choi Hana joined her on the roof. She was no longer a lieutenant. She had been promoted. Everyone who worked on the message had been promoted. "The first colony ship launches next month," Hana said. "They're calling it the New Soul. It's going to Alpha Centauri." Yuna nodded. More ships, more colonies. The government wants 1 million humans living off Earth within 50 years. Hana paused. "We're spreading. Just like we told the Voral we would." "Yes," Yuna said. Hana was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question Yuna had been asking herself for a year. Did we do the right thing? Yuna considered her answer carefully. "We survived," she finally said. "That's what humans do. We survive, and then we spread, and then we change whatever we touch." She looked at Hana. "Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing depends on what we choose to do next." "What will we choose?" Yuna smiled sadly. "I don't know, but I think the galaxy is about to find out." Far away, in the depths of Voral space, Admiral Tova kept a copy of the human message in her personal archive. She watched it sometimes when she was alone. She studied the faces, the weapons, the numbers, the promise. She had made the right choice. She was certain of it. Harvesting Earth would have been too costly, too risky. The humans were too stubborn, too violent, too persistent. Better to leave them alone in their little solar system. But sometimes, in quiet moments, she wondered, what if we had never come at all? What if we had left them alone with their chemical rockets and their moon landings? What might they have become? She would never know. But she suspected the answer would have been different. Softer. Less dangerous. Now they knew what they were. Now they were proud of it. Now they were spreading across the galaxy with weapons and warships, and a memory of the day they scared an alien empire into retreat. Tova had wanted to avoid creating an enemy. Instead, she might have created something worse. She might have created a rival. And unlike the Voral, the humans were just getting started. They were young, they were hungry, they were angry, and they were everywhere. The galaxy would never be the same. Neither would Earth. But perhaps that was always going to happen. Perhaps humans were always going to become this. Perhaps the Voral visit just made it happen faster. Or perhaps not. Perhaps, somewhere in all that violence and darkness, there was something else. Something better. Something that would grow alongside the warships and weapons. Yuna hoped so. She had to hope so. Because she was human too. And humans never stopped hoping. Even when they probably should.